all of you for coming out. For those who were with us last time, you remember that the quarterly report had not been released when we had the last meeting. We agreed we would not wait a full quarter. We would come back when the report was released to have a meeting to discuss the findings of the quarterly report. As always, we had a presentation by our monitors. They'll let you know all what we found in the report, but we'll spend most of the time with the floor open and get questions and comments from all of you. We don't have time limits for how long you can speak, but we do ask everyone to self-police and make sure that you don't take the floor for too long so that everybody who wants to speak has an opportunity to do so. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to our monitor, Jonathan.
Thank you, Judith. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Good to see familiar faces again and good to see some new faces as well. So I think actually at our last meeting, we had issued our report, but it had just come out, and we didn't think there was adequate time for people to have read it and ask informed questions. So people asked if we would have a meeting sooner than we typically have them, because they're typically on a quarterly basis. And so we agreed. So we said we would just plan this one 1 month after the last one. So that's why we're here today. Like we normally will do, we'll briefly introduce ourselves. We'll just rather quickly walk through some of the stuff we've done and some of the stuff we're still doing. But most importantly to us, frankly, is to hear from you. We want to hear what you're seeing on the streets, good and bad. We want to hear what's working, what's not working. We write everything down, and rest assured that everything you tell us, it factors into the way we monitor the police department. We might not be in a position to answer every question or solve every problem right here, but everything you say goes into what we do to make sure the police department is complying with the consent decree. So just very quickly, I'm Jonathan Aroney. I'm the lead monitor over the New Orleans Police Department, and I work with a team of former police officers and professors, statisticians, lawyers, community members. Judith is on our team. Many of you know Judith. This is Dennis Nowicki. Dennis is the deputy monitor on the team. Dennis was the police chief in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and also a deputy police chief in Chicago. And so we're kind of lucky we don't always have the deputy monitor here with us. So thank you for coming. So let's do this. Some of you have picked up the report in the back. That's our most recent report. It's the same one, as I said, that was just issued right at the time of our last meeting. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of what's in there, and then highlight a couple things that we're focusing on now, and then turn it over to you. So what we write about in our report is we really, again, found a mixed bag of successes within the police department. We found some very legitimate successes and progress being made, frankly, in many areas. We also found some areas where we felt inadequate progress was being made. Things were going too slowly, and so that's what I mean when I talk about a mixed bag. One area where we saw great success was the department has rolled out what's called a CIT program, a Crisis Intervention Team program. It's actually modeled after a program that was in Memphis, Tennessee. This is a program designed to train police officers to have special skills to help people in mental health crisis. So you might have seen across the country very unfortunate police interactions with members of the mental health community, if you will, on the street, which often ends badly for the member in mental health crisis. Well, what NOPD did is they created a program called CIT. It gives special training to police officers to de-escalate the use of force and to help those people in mental health crisis rather than resorting to kind of the old-fashioned police techniques, if you will. The police department has already graduated 2 classes through this CIT program. We reviewed the entire program, the training. It is a quality program. Officers are now on the streets wearing the little CIT insignia, which means they're trained, and so far the program has been successful. So that clearly is chalked up in the success column. We saw another success, and this one is quite meaningful because we dinged NOPD for a long time for not doing enough in this area, and so we finally have seen progress, and I'll be the first one to criticize, but I'll also be the first one to say when they've stepped up. This is called the Officer Assistance and Support Program. Now, it's important you understand what this is because it sounds like it's something totally focused on officers, but I want to explain why it has a significant impact on the community. This is a program designed to ensure that the police officers of New Orleans are healthy and mentally healthy and are dealing with the stress of the job well. So in that sense, it's officer focused. The reason why it is, in my view, a community program is because it is well known that officers that are having mental health problems, as we all know, it doesn't translate well on the street. Right? Officers who are not mentally healthy or are having stress in their lives or marital problems or drinking problems or whatever it is, that manifests itself in increase in use of force, lack of patience, inability to de-escalate, and so it's all together. So if NOPD can create a program that makes for healthier officers, directly translate onto the street. It took them a long time to get this up and running. They've now brought in a full-time director of the program, actually a woman from the community. Her name is Ms. Cecile Thibault, top-notch person in my view, and passionate about this project. Now she's staffing up that office, and we're seeing good results already. This next one is clearly a mixed bag in my book. It relates to the police academy. So the police academy, we for sure have seen some progress being made, but it is probably our biggest concern still that not enough progress has been made. And everything within a police department is important, but when you're talking about the organization that shapes the future of the department, right, that shapes every new officer coming out, one would have to say that the academy is way important. And we've been hard on the police department because we don't think adequate progress is being made. And so while we have seen progress in some areas, which is good, still there's a lot more work to be done there, and that's written up in the report as well. Another area similar where we've seen progress but not enough, in our view, is with the department's record-keeping practices. Record-keeping to some might sound like just paperwork, but record-keeping is critical because it allows supervisors to supervise. It allows management to see what's going on. At the end of the day, it allows the community to hold the police department accountable. And where we don't see adequate records, we don't view that as just a paperwork issue. We view that as a fundamental supervision and accountability issue. And so we have definitely seen some places where we pointed out problems, the paperwork and documentation has gotten better. But there are still plenty of places where it's not good enough. And so we've written that up in our report as well. One area, by the way, where we still see room for improvement is with vehicle pursuits. So unlike, well, you probably all watch police shows on TV, and whenever someone's getting away, what do the police do? They chase after them, and it's a high-speed car chase, and it makes for great movies and great television. But in real life, police pursuits are almost never a good thing. They almost always injure someone that shouldn't be injured, and they bad idea. And a police department needs good records to determine whether officers are complying with the police pursuit policy. So that's an example of where we don't see adequate records. It's quite important to us. Two related pieces on the record-keeping side is the department has to keep good, clear records for things like photographic lineups. if they're showing pictures of potential suspects to a victim, they show them pictures. They have to keep very good records of the pictures that they showed the victim of the crime, and we expect to see good records. They also have to have records of custodial interrogations. So we can go in, and their supervisors can go in and find the videos of the custodial interrogations and find when it happened and who interrogated the suspect, etc. We found problems in both of these areas previously. What our most recent report tells you is that based on our findings, NOPD did take very quick action and solved the photographic lineup problem very quickly, actually, which kind of leads me to ask why it wasn't solved on their own before I raised it. Be that as it may, it is solved now. Custodial interrogation still has room to go, but we've seen great progress there too. So here again, progress, not done yet, but progress. And also, we won't go into the details here, but we wrote up in our report the manner in which the department handled the murder of Officer Darrell Holloway and the way they handled the search for the suspect, ultimately the apprehension of the suspect, and the transfer of the suspect to the custody of the sheriff. And we monitored that entire process from start to finish, and that was handled very well, and we write the details in our report. There's one other thing that we're not going to get into here in the report, but I should point it out to you because if anyone has a lot of time on their hands and no social life like me, this would be a good thing to read. There's a whole section of data in the back of the report from a survey that we conducted. We conducted a community survey. It's, I think, the largest and broadest community survey that's been conducted here, focusing on police-citizen interactions, focusing on the citizens' view of the police. Actually, we surveyed 3 different groups. We surveyed citizens, like you all. We surveyed police officers, and we surveyed detainees. And so it's pretty broad coverage. What we've published in this report is the data of the community survey. And the reason it's so important is while we published the basic data previously, in this report we break down the data by demographic group. So you can see for any given question whether men and women answer the same way or not, whether white, non-white answers the same way or not, college educated, non-college educated. It's filled with data. Some of you might find it interesting. It's all in the back of the report, not just the analysis, but the raw data itself. Now, a little more before we turn it over to you as to some of the things we're doing now. One is, and we do this all the time, but Dennis and I and our team spend a lot of time reviewing body-worn camera videos. So you know officers wear body-worn cameras, or it's right here on the chest, and now the department has rolled out cameras to sergeants as well. That's actually very important because there are so many calls for service in New Orleans that sergeants sometimes respond to calls for service themselves, whereas in other cities it would usually just be the patrol officer. So we felt it was important, and the department felt it was important to outfit sergeants with cameras as well. So that's a wealth of data for us. And the reason we spend so much time with it is this. So our team rides with officers frequently because we believe we should monitor what they're doing in person. And frankly, that's quite useful, but it's only useful up to an extent. Why? Well, do you think everyone behaves really well when I'm riding next to them? Or not? Okay, yes, everyone behaves really well when I'm riding next to them. Now, even so, it's still important because we see other officers and we see how the community interacts, so it's still important. But the video cameras let us ride along, if you will, when they don't know we're there, right? We're not looking over their shoulder, but we can go watch the video afterwards. So we review a significant amount of videos. And we look for things like, we look at 2 levels. First, we look to make sure the camera is being used properly. Is the camera being turned on every time it should? Is it being kept on? Is it ever being obscured? Is the audio, can we hear what's going on? Is it turned off too early? So all of those things we look at with respect to the cameras. And then, of course, we also look at what's being filmed. We look at the substance. Is the officer being professional? Is the officer searching someone when he or she shouldn't? Right? So it's the use of the camera and it's what's captured on the camera. So we do a lot of that, and we're still doing that now. We're continuing to look more deeply at the department's Public Integrity Bureau, PIB. It's the Internal Affairs Department of the police department. And we're looking at things there to make sure that citizen complaints are being treated well, that when a citizen comes in to complain, no one in the police department is trying to convince them not to complain, or no one in the police department is creating an atmosphere that doesn't make someone comfortable complaining. We're also looking at how the complaints are coded. If someone comes in and complains about a racial profiling issue, I was pulled over by a police officer because I'm black, that we want to make sure is coded as a racial profiling issue. And we care about coding because if you don't code complaints accurately, then anyone looking at the data can't make an accurate assessment of what's happening. So we're focusing on that and other things within PIB. The consent decree has about 490 paragraphs, most of which have a compliance obligation. That's a lot of items to comply with. What we've done is we've taken every one of those paragraphs and we've translated it into a measurable, objectively measurable standard. So in other words, whereas the consent decree might say NOPD has to have full and effective supervision, well, that has to be measured somehow so we know whether NOPD is compliant or not. So it was a big effort, but we had to translate those into a measurable metric, if you will. So we spent time doing that. I already mentioned the academy. We still continue to focus on the academy. We're focusing on the lesson plans, the curriculum, the evaluation of the instructors. Remember, just because you're a good police officer doesn't mean you're a good instructor. Just because you're a good instructor doesn't mean you're a good police officer. And likewise, just because there are good materials doesn't mean you're a good teacher. We've all had good teachers and bad teachers. We know the difference. And so we look at the materials, we look at the overall plan, we look at what they're teaching. Are they teaching the right things? Are they teaching the laws about immigration? Are they teaching the laws about racial bias? Are they teaching the laws about dealing with the bias-free policing rules? Okay? So we checked, are they teaching all the right things? Then we're checking, are they teaching them correctly? And is that teaching getting across to the students? So we spent a lot of time in the academy, and as I said, we're still not happy with the academy, notwithstanding that some progress has been made. We also, and this isn't unique to this quarter, this is what we do every quarter, and Dennis does a lot in this area, but we review all of their policies, at least all of the material policies, and we give our comments back. Some of you know this because you've heard me say it before, but for those who are new, the police department, as a result of the consent decree, established a compliance bureau. It's a bureau within the department that really it helps push NOPD forward with respect to compliance. And we have to work closely with that group. That group has impressed us so far. They don't take the police position on everything. They take the consent decree position on everything, and we've been impressed with that. And so we work with them. We give our feedback to them on the policies, and we're very impressed now. We weren't last year, but we're very impressed now at how fast the policies get turned around, how much better they are, and we've approved many good policies now. We review the lesson plans, we review the materials that the academy is using, and we make sure that stuff is being translated onto the streets. Now, obviously, there's a lot more that we do, but that's an overview from the report. Since we only have limited time, I'm just going to ask Dennis if he has anything to add, and other than that, we just want to hear from you, and I got my pen ready to scribble away furiously.
About the only thing that I will add is that there are some things going on now that will be part of our next report. but one of them that's pretty noteworthy is that the department has just gone through a train-the-trainer program on bias policing, bringing in some experts. If you're interested in knowing the name of the experts, it's Dr. Laura Friedel, who's quite renowned in the area of bias policing and causing change in the way police agencies police based upon her research and research from across the country. And the department just completed that training a while back, and now all the officers, they train the trainers, and all officers will be trained in that subject based upon the teachings and research of Dr. Laura Friedel. It's worth, if you're inclined, it's worth looking at some of the works that she's done and some of the writings that she's done.
Okay, let's, questions, comments, stories?
Yes.
Right quick, I want to say thank you all from the Police Community Advisory Board for the 6th District. Please come to meetings, come to the table so we can get this thing done. Get the address, we send you notice. That's my first part, welcoming you up here. The second part is, to say that it was successful, that the training, and I went through the police a long time ago, for about a year. I know you get all the training in the academy when you get in the car with the FTO, and that's my concern. What are you doing with the FTO that's been out there 15, 20 years that have the habit that says, you know, I know this guy is guilty because I see him talking. All the training that happened at the academy goes down the drain with the FTO. My concern, after reading the report, have anything been done with the FTO officer? Because all the work goes down the drain. Secondly, we met with the director of training, and one of the things happened in North Carolina, Baton Rouge, even the state of Louisiana State Police. When they pull you over, they says, I pull you over because of this. And I only hope we can have institute that with New Orleans Police. When you pull me over, you tell me, I pull you over because of this. I know there's two types of stop. There's a traffic stop and a felony stop. Now, I understand the felony stop, you have to tell me that. But in the traffic stop, a Joe Blow citizen, and I told you all about the broken window that was before, and I repeat it again. 88% of the cars in New Orleans are electric. The very first window to go out is the driver's window. We're trying to establish the training, the mechanisms to deal with that. When the officer pulled me over, I can't let the window down. So what I would do is put on the emergency plastic, put both hands on the dashboard and unlock the door and let the officer open it. Because if I open that door, we all tense, and then New Orleans may be killed. So we talked with them at the training academy for that. But by closing, we want to institute, when you pull me over, say, I pull you over because of, and that would help us a great deal. We had some numbers I'm waiting to come out of Carolina with that. And I know the chief can know that in his area, that was part of the deal what they did in most of the Northeast states on when the officer approached the traffic. This is why I pull you over. Because that question to you, well, why do you pull me over? And that would eliminate some of the friction.
Two responses. First of all, the FTO, the department is now, in fact, it's been going on early December, a recertification of all FTOs in training for those as well. So you're correct. FTO is a real critical position within the department. After the academy, they're the ones that shape the personalities and the behavior of the officers, the young officers, and they're now paying attention to that. The other thing that you mentioned, there's labels for everything. What you were talking about is the way the police officer approaches you in a traffic stop. That's called procedural justice.
Right.
The department it's something that we're helping them with, but the department has recognized the value of procedural justice, and it's going to be incorporated into their training going forward. Training for the police has to be more scenario-based. They have to have police officers go through exercises with people from the community, perhaps, as part of the exercise. And in that, they're going to be teaching them the values of procedural justice. If you're treated with respect, you give respect back. And that's really what it's all about. It's more than that. And I couldn't explain it to you adequately in the time we have. But just so you know that is an aspect or a factor of all training going forward. Maybe.
I want to add something to it. So your point about the FTOs is well taken, and when we do that, and in fact, there are 4 elements of training that we focus on very closely. Okay? First, it's the academy, right? The new folks coming in. But you're right, it doesn't end there, right? So second is the FTO program. Because if we have a program that the first thing the FTO says is, forget everything you learned at the academy, then we got a big problem on our hands, right? So we do that one. Third, but it doesn't end there either. Because there's also ongoing training in every roll call that the police department has. And if the NOPD has sergeants at roll calls that are rolling their eyes at things, we care about that. So we focus on roll call training too. And then finally, police officers have to go through in-service training regularly. So each one of those aspects is part of our monitoring focus.
I'm going to say one more thing. You invited your fellow residents here to attend your community meetings, your district community meetings. Those are very important for you to participate in. The consent decree requires them. The department even has some in place, or some of that activity in place before the consent decree. But it's a very important activity for you to be involved in. Show up, challenge your district commander. He or she will have officers present as well that will participate, that should participate. Challenge them. Again, procedural justice. You want to challenge them in an appropriate way, and they should respond to you in an appropriate way. But I would encourage you to take him up on his invite and show up in his district's.
I'm going to get a list for all of the districts and give it to the community so you can go to first and the second, because the sixth and the second district is like almost the same thing.
Almost the same.
Yeah, so I'll get the information and give it to the student to your email.
So the procedural justice requirement that Dennis was talking about is part of the numerical outcomes we'll be looking at.
Right.
When we look at the video, how often was the officer compliant with the procedural
And I
justice?
think you mentioned situation training. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Right here, and then Randall. Yes, sir.
I got 3. The first comment I want to find out is, what are we doing with the police officers dealing with deaf individuals? They don't know sign language, and when you go to stop them, they get hostile, they clam up. The citizens don't know what the police officer is saying. The police don't know what's going on with the deaf person. So we got a communication problem, a serious communication problem. I had an officer to pull a gun on a deaf female young lady that was going in her home. The young lady didn't know what was going on, so she got in and locked the door, peeking out the window. Next thing you know, 12 calls the police there. But thank God one of the officers knew one of the other family members to call them to de-escalate it. But you about to have a swap roll out here because you can't communicate with them. All right, enough on that. Officers that have complaints in their record, anytime they put a uniform on, I don't care if they were found guilty by PIB or not, they need to wear cameras. Let me say that again. If I file a complaint against you and it's still under investigation, every time you put a uniform on, you should wear a body camera. I'm seeing everyday officers that I know have complaints against them are not wearing body cameras.
So, can I press on that for a second? So, the cameras have been rolled out to all patrol officers. We found a couple of reasons why some patrol officers weren't getting them. Like when one officer was assigned to another district, there was a problem. When an officer was assigned as a small task force to go help another district. But we think more recently those gaps have been fixed. And we actually test how often we see patrol officers without cameras. It's very low now. So I would like, we can do it afterward, but I would like to hear more about where you're seeing officers without them.
The Gus High Rise, over by my senior citizen, 1301 Simon Bob.
Is it NOPD or
NOPD. No, the officer works, the officer is assigned to.
It's a detail item.
No. Let me clarify. The officer is assigned to the developer, okay? Then, after he gets over his assignment, he works a detail at the developer. That's the problem.
Okay. This interests me. We'll find out, because all of our tests recently have shown a very high percentage, very high, of officers having the cameras. So if you're seeing, this is what I want to hear. If you're seeing them that aren't, then when we're done, maybe give me a little more details, and we'll look into it.
Names and time.
Yeah, good.
Okay, the last thing I got is PIB. PIB is a joke. My senior citizens call PIB to file a complaint. They have to go on Russia Blade Street to file a complaint. By the time they get on Russia Blade Street, and they tell you that at a Shea Culture Center on Tuesday, the officer slammed me up against the wall. Well, you wait 3 months later to come to that shed to see if they got video. Why you wait 3 months? Why you don't come out right then and there? That's the problem. So by the time you do the investigation, there's no evidence because the cameras don't record it on top of themselves.
Got it.
So that's why I feel like that about that.
And let me say that the complaint form has been put on the website, so they don't actually have to go.
Senior citizens don't use internet.
I understand. Or they could go to any district, and they should be able to go to a library and get it.
Yeah, no, but you have two different points there, right? Whether they have to go to Russian Blade to get the thing, which that we started to solve. But your second one, how quickly PIB is acting to preserve evidence, that's a different question, and that, I'm glad you told me that.
Good evening, and I've been in the process of reviewing your big report again. You know,
I bet you have.
It's kind of difficult in terms of getting through it, but I normally concentrate on the use of force, and I see a lot of still ongoing disturbing things in here concerning the use of force, but especially reporting requirements of the use of force by supervisors, as well as just basic requirements of that. You have numbers here, 35 out of 141 cases, evidence of reportable force abuse cases, members of the New Orleans Police Department. We alerted NOPD PIB personnel of 35 cases and asked them to provide all associated force statements for use of force. The department was able to provide force statements for use of force for only 10. For only 10. You know, that seems to be a problem. And then you have officer witnesses statements on use of force that appear to be also scant and very limited, and it appears as though officers are not really cooperating with secondary reporting or as witness reporting according to your report here. That's one matter. The charging of criminals with crimes, you know, by police officers. Use case in point, there was a case in which a person had, I guess, a pedestrian had thrown a cup or an object at an individual in a car. This was taped. The individual in the car got out of the car and confronted the pedestrian. It appears that the pedestrian was hurt in the process of some form of fashion. The pedestrian really was the one that threw the object at the car and committed a crime. There's no right of way for pedestrians. The one who drove the car did not hit the pedestrian. Of course, when you look at the tape, he came fairly close to the pedestrian, but he did not hit the pedestrian. But I mean, I would do the same thing. Somebody threw an object and hit my car, I'm going to get out and I'm going to try to identify him because he committed an assault and a criminal act, is what I'm saying. But when police officers came on the scene, of course, some sort of physical encounter occurred. They arrested only the person who got out of the car, and I heard somebody say, I don't know who it was, say he shouldn't have got out of his car. Well, you have a right to get out of your car if somebody commit a crime against you or destroy your property and identify that individual so you could get that information, turn it over to police so you could make that person account for his criminal behavior if he assaults me. That's what I'm going to do, you know. So I think that the police, when they assessed that situation, it was assessed improperly and incorrectly. Well, it happened to be the driver was an African American, and the one who threw the object at the car was a white male. That's one more thing, you know, in terms of how they arrest. That needs to be And the thing of secondary communication, is there a policy that y'all have in place regarding police officers using their radios? And is there a policy in place in case they use some other form of communication to communicate when they're on a call or when they're rolling out on something, that they do not use the radio that is being recorded, but they convert or revert to some other source of communication which may not be taped? You know, I think that I heard of an instance in that, and that's a problem. One more thing.
No, you had three, but I promise I'll come back to you.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Well, and you know, we'll hang out afterward if you want to address more.
Okay, but
we won't run out.
Deal with those three?
Yeah.
Respond to them. First of all, the facts in our report are the facts about the use of force, but specifically on those 10 cases, 10 of 35, what we did there was we looked at assault on police officer cases with the idea that if a police officer gets assaulted by an arrestee, the officer is going to use force to overcome that assault. And if he uses force, he's required by the consent decree and by department policy to report that force so it can be investigated to make sure the level of force was appropriate or the use of force was appropriate. And that's what we did there was we identified 35 cases. Of those 35 cases, they found the force was reported in all but 10. It was just those 10 cases that they didn't have the force reported, and they didn't. And there was an investigation done on those 10 cases and on the officers, and appropriate action was taken. What we have seen since that report was done is some significant improvements in PIB and the way they investigate force. Among them, they've increased the staff by at least 3 individuals. They're providing closer review. They're reviewing the investigations done at the unit level by the officer supervisor, which are generally the lower levels of force, such as forcible cuffing or pointing a weapon. And those investigations are now improved because of that closer review and supervision by PIB. So there is improvement, and you will see us continue to look at those cases going forward and report what we find, whether they're doing it correctly, doing good investigations or not. But again, there have been steps taken by the department, and our review will be ongoing as to whether or not they're doing the right thing.
Sir.
Buenas noches. Creo que también deberían de, en los entrenamientos que le hacen a los oficiales, darles clases de relaciones humanas.
I think in the trainings that you're giving your officers, you should also be giving them training on human relations.
En la semana del 20 de septiembre, entre el 20 y el 25 de septiembre,
In the week of the 20th to the 26th of September,
uno de nuestros compañeros iba caminando hacia la tienda y de un carro le dispararon.
one of our colleagues was walking to the store, and from a car they shot at him.
Le dispararon con un arma no era de fuego, era de juguete,
It
pero
wasn't a firearm, it was like a toy gun, like a paintball gun.
pero igual lo dañaron.
But either way, it hurt him.
Y fueron a poner la denuncia a la policía,
And he went to report this to the police.
y el oficial lo que hizo fue cuestionar al compañero. Le dijo, yo no te estoy viendo dañado, yo no te estoy viendo nada.
And the police officer, what he did was actually question him and doubt that he was even hurt or had anything happen to him.
Esa no es la actitud del oficial. Él debería de tomar las cosas en serio, porque ¿qué tal esa arma? Gracias a Dios que fue un arma de juguete. Y si hubiera sido un arma de fuego,
And this shouldn't be that the way that the officer approaches somebody. They should take this thing seriously, because this time, yes, it was, a paintball gun, but what if it wasn't fired?
entonces el oficial no hizo nada. Le dijo, vamos a ir a revisar las cámaras que están ahí en esa luz.
And the officer didn't do anything. He said, yeah, we're going to go review the cameras that are there on the light.
Y ahí en esas luces desafortunadamente no hay ninguna cámara.
And in that light, there's not even a camera.
Porque los compañeros cuando hicieron la denuncia fueron a revisar a ver si habían cámaras en la luz.
And because they went back to look to see if there were cameras
Y en ese momento igual las mismas personas, creo, supongo que las mismas personas que le dispararon, se pararon nuevamente en el carro y le dijeron, si no se mueven ahorita, se mueren.
And then when they were going back to the lane, look at it, the car actually came back later and threatened our colleague again, saying, if you don't get out of here, we'll shoot at you.
Fueron a amenazar a los compañeros, los amenazaron de muerte, le dijeron que se movieran, que si no los iban a matar ahí.
And they gave them a death threat, saying that if they didn't get out of that area, they were going to kill them.
Entonces, como ustedes están viendo, esa es una cosa seria, eso no es juguete, no es juguetería. Esa es una cosa bien en seria que hay que tomar.
And so it is actually, to him, something very serious, and we want the police to take it seriously.
Entonces, por eso es imperativo y es necesario que pongan en práctica la nueva póliza
And this is why
de la
it's so
policía.
important that the new bias-free policing policy goes into practice.
Porque tenemos tiempo de estar pidiendo por esa póliza y todavía no la han actualizado, todavía nosotros estamos esperando para ver si de esa manera sí respeta la policía, respeta y más a nuestra comunidad hispana.
Because we have more than 2 years saying how necessary this policy is becoming and really pushing for us.
Porque tomen en cuenta esto, si esa persona, como era un hispano, si hubiera sido de otra raza, un ciudadano americano, en segundo lo hubieran tomado en cuenta. Buenas noches.
And I think that, there is a big difference a lot of times in how the police treat the Latino community, especially with the language barrier, and that's just even more reason that this policy, especially bias-free policing in the immigration community, needs to be put in place.
Thank you. May I respond?
¿Puedo responder?
Bien.
So the police department needs to take every complaint seriously. So what you're telling us is very important to us. Now, we have seen some progress made in some areas, but not enough yet. Here's some progress we have seen. We have seen the police department just got approval to pay bilingual police officers a little more money to encourage the number of police officers who are fluent in Spanish as well as English, or Vietnamese as well as English. That might not sound like a big deal, but that's a big deal. We need more officers who can communicate with more people. And we're very happy to see the Civil Service Commission just authorize that. Two, the bias-free policing policy is a critically important policy. We could not agree more. And that absolutely has to not only be done, but two other things have to happen. And they haven't happened yet. That policy has to roll out, then the policy has to be trained at the academy. It has to be incorporated into the academy training. Right? It's not enough just to have a policy. And then the other piece which is critical, and it's part of our job to do this, is we have to assess that the policy is a good policy, that it is incorporated into training, and that it is having an impact on the street. So we call that outcome assessments. So what we actually do after the policy is rolled out and approved, and after the policy is trained on, we test to see if it is having an impact. So frankly, what the type of stuff we will do is we will talk to you and your colleagues, because you have firsthand experience about whether it's working or not. And that's part of our outcome assessments. So I wish I could say the problem you're describing has been solved yet. It clearly hasn't, but we watch that very, very closely.
Right here, then this gentleman, and then here, and then in the back. 1, 2, 3. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I thank you for doing these things. It's really wonderful.
Can you hear you?
Oh, okay.
I can repeat the question
No,
afterwards.
I can talk loud.
Okay.
Thank you for coming and working with us. I think it's wonderful. I was wondering about a couple things, like you're talking about respect and police cameras. Do the people who are at the front desk at headquarters are they wearing cameras? And are the people in the district stations wearing cameras? Because I went into main headquarters and I started talking about my problem, and I asked for victim assistance, and the woman lied to me and said there was no victim assistance department, and the guy behind her was laughing at my problem. I walked outside and I talked to another officer, and I asked him if he would say something to the officer behind the desk for making fun of me. And he didn't know that I followed him in and watched him as he started talking to the guy, and he was making fun of me too. And it's also, okay, I went into a district station and I started showing the supervisor my phone. A local guy threatens me in my phone, but he writes in code. He says that he is raped and trafficked by people that are prominent in the community, and the police are some of the main guys that come to get their sex and sodomize him. And this supervisor told me, "You're insane. Do you want me to get you a psychiatrist?" And he was so rude. He didn't even, we're talking about objectivity, sir. He didn't even bother to look at the evidence. He didn't even question whether maybe the guy's writing in code, so he's trying to keep somebody who shouldn't see it from seeing what he's trying to say. He could have been on drugs, he could have been drunk, but no, he focused on me, okay, and how I could possibly be nuts, okay?
So, thank you. No, you can sit. Thank you for that. So, certainly, as I said before, all complaints need to be taken seriously, and everyone deserves respect when they walk into a police department. That's very important. And if anyone was not respected, they absolutely should go to IPM or PIB. The Independent Police Monitor takes professionalism complaints, as does PIB. So that's my first comment. With respect to the cameras, I actually don't believe that the people at the desk in headquarters have cameras on. They're actually not officers, they're civilians. But I'm glad you raised this issue. I know that when you go to PIB, there are cameras, and when you meet with an intake person at PIB, there are cameras. But you raised a good issue that we're going to look into. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Right here, and then here, then to the back, and then here. Sir.
Hi, I just had a quick couple of notes. The IPM, the police monitor, they need to be more diligent on getting information back to the citizens. Like, if I was to ask an independent police monitor, where could I find a copy of the regulations for writing police reports and things like that, they should be able to give me a link or send me a email or something where I can verify it. I know they might not have time to actually go through it, but they should be able to point me out in the right direction. And we need mediation people for non-emergencies. I lived in Seattle after Hurricane Katrina, and they have dedicated college professionals and college students for non-emergencies. The citizens need to try to use these mediation projects, but we don't have a mediation department, so that might be something that we can look into. All of the mediation is strictly done by lawyers, and that's dealing with family matters and stuff like that. There is no, say, like a minor problem that someone in the law official field can just help us out with some advice. There is none of that.
And just to be clear, you're talking about mediation between two citizens or mediation between a citizen and a police officer?
Both, but
Okay.
between two citizens and between the agencies and police officers, they need people in there that doesn't tie up all the resources that the other officers can be doing. I noticed that we need a little bit improvement in that. And also, if we do hire officers, we look for the problem solvers. A lot of the officers that we hire, they just react. They're not problem solvers. We need problem solvers. We also need ethnicity training, cultural training, cultural sensitivity training. That needs to be in the rotation. Also, the independent police monitors, they're based out of D.C., but the only problem is with that is D.C. is struggling with the high murder rates too. So, to me, checking in with D.C. that has a worse record than you, it's kind of counterproductive. And one more thing. And also, when there's a shortage of police officers, we can help by putting some of these firemen in administrative capacities, minimal administrative capacities, and that way if the supervisors, if we're short, and I know Mardi Gras time and a lot of times that we have these festivities, supervisors be out patrolling too. But the firemen, they have a lot of downtime. They can watch the radio, they can do dispatch, and that's pretty much it.
Just maybe don't have time to hit all of them, but can I respond to a couple? One, so I am going to pass on your comments to the independent police monitor about being diligent in getting back to citizens. That's an important point, and I know Susan pretty well, and I suspect she'll take it seriously. So I will pass that on. Your mediation comment, I think, is a very strong comment for a couple reasons. So right now, the police department, and frankly our team as well, is looking for ways to give officers more time to answer calls for service, more quickly, interact with the community, right? But there's a lot of other stuff that burdens officers. And if we can free up more time to be police and community-oriented policing, then that's better. So we've worked with the department to come up with a list of ways to do that. You just gave us another one. That is, officers spend a lot of time counseling, right? Counseling interpersonal disputes. Yeah. And if New Orleans had a better mediation program, that would cut down on police response. So I love that idea, and I'm going to pass that on, frankly, to the chief to add to the list. And then, just very quickly, totally agree on cultural sensitivity training. It is being done. It needs to get better. Frankly, in our view, community needs to be involved in that sort of thing. That's the way it's best. So I agree with you on that.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for coming. I had 3 questions. The first one is, you say cameras have been rolled out, body-worn cameras have been rolled out for patrols and sergeants.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of times that is appropriately used, like, less breakdowns or not being used? Like, what is the percentage of that for both the patrols and sergeants? I was wondering if, I got some information from the recent budget hearings, there's a high rate of attrition for officers who get hired here and get trained here and then get pulled into Jefferson Parish or other adjacent parishes. Is your group doing anything to sort of recommend how the NOPD can preserve the officers it gets with the low pay that they have? And the last thing is, what is an early warning system? I've seen that in the budget, I've seen other places, and I'm not sure what that refers to.
Sure. Okay, we can hit all those. Now, I don't have all my data in front of me, so you're just going to have to bear with some top-level answers to your first question. So your question was asked about body-worn camera use. I think you were saying, how often are they used properly? The answer is extremely high number. When the last time we checked, it was in the high 90% of being used properly, which is great news. This actually, that's the point. So I think that one of our recent tests were 99% proper use of cameras. So that's good news. With respect to the high attrition rate, that bothers us, obviously. We only have, our authority is constrained by the consent decree, so there's only so much we can do. However, we are doing some things to attack that problem. And, everyone always talks about money, right? Money is why officers are leaving. I don't believe that to be true. I think money matters, but if they wanted to be really rich, they wouldn't become police officers. So it's really not just the money. I think the real reason is because it's things like the loss of pride in the job, or the brand. The NOPD brand isn't what it might have been. You think of a good brand. What's a good brand? The Army. Army's a good brand. You can be proud of that, and they don't get paid a lot of money, right? So NOPD's got to restore the pride to the brand. Now, how do they do that? Well, they do it through all the things we're talking about here, right? People are proud when they're trained well. They're proud when they have good policies. They're proud when the citizens respect what they do, and that comes from community policing, right? So while we can't help solve this problem like that, all the things we're doing are designed to restore that pride, protect the citizens, which we think will directly help with the attrition. And then finally, early warning system. It's actually a kind of a brilliant technology. Humans can see certain things among their officers. So a sergeant can look at an officer and say, gee, that officer is depressed every day, this could be a problem, right? Or that officer has a discipline, that's a problem. But what an early warning system does is it takes a whole bunch of data, and the computer actually looks for trends in the data, and then throws up a red flag when an officer to the computer looks like he or she's having a problem. Things that a human might not notice. Right? A human might not notice that person came in late to work the last 10 times and has a disciplinary hearing and did something else. So at basic form, that's what it does. It lets management look for trends that can identify officers who need help before a problem occurs. Thank you.
So Pat, and then this gentleman here. Pat.
Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you who attended to come out. The monitors here and an attempt to make policing constitutional in our city. And I applaud you for some of the work you've done. But there needs to be, I think, tighter look at the quality of arrest.
It's a little hard to hear. The quality of arrest?
The quality of arrest. We're still getting too many cases where people are locked up on very weak facts, and the district attorney's office is almost a slave catcher.
That's right. That's the reform.
There are delays after delays,
right.
after delays, after delays. So people stay in jail half a year if they can't make bond, and most of them can't. So they come up and they say, okay, let's do a plea bargain.
Yep.
So the guy says, I'm not guilty, but I'll take a plea deal to get out of jail. That is the most egregious thing that is happening in this city. And it starts with the arresting officer who has weak facts, assumptions that deduce that this person is a criminal. And I know that's in general what you're working on, but I don't get a sense of what I read and what I see happening in the city, that those facts that police officer determines enough to charge a person for felony, that I don't get a sense that there's anyone looking over those facts, that he swears the truth and sends somebody off to jail.
So if I may,
yeah.
So we, as I think you know, we don't have any control or authority over the DA, so I can't speak to that point. But I don't dispute your point. I'm just saying we don't have that. But from the officer perspective, so there are two key elements, I think, to try to fix what you're talking about. One, clearly, is better training. That actually I'll say there are three. Okay, let's start even farther back. One is coming up with a selection process that gets the right people into the police department in the first place. right? You have to get the right people in there. 2 is you got to train them the right way. And then 3 is the critical one, and this is where we have criticized the department before. They have to be supervised. They have to be actively supervised, and people have to look to see what they're doing and whether they're doing it right. We've criticized the department for not having adequate supervision. I think that might not solve the problem you're talking about, but I think it would contribute toward the solution. And you know, we still don't think supervisors have enough time to supervise. There's so much put on their plate, but it's something we're working on.
Just one follow-up. Is there a way that you could project how long it would take for those 3 things to happen?
No. I'm an honest guy.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
I'm sure you noticed the recent news reports highlighting the atrocious response times for NOPD.
I've seen that. I've seen a very thoughtful article in one of your newspapers.
As well as the lack of ability to sufficiently staff the NOPD ranks. Sufficiently staff the NOPD ranks.
Yeah.
Many of the people interviewed in these articles blame the consent decree.
I've read that too.
And you didn't get an opportunity to respond to that, so I'm going to give you that opportunity. Is their criticism valid, and how would you respond to those comments you've acknowledged you've read?
Well, actually, I'm quite glad you asked that. So I think that the criticism is mostly wrong, but not 100% wrong. So first of all, there is plenty that contributes to response time problems. Some of it is staffing, but not all of it. There are department deployment decisions, whether you use sworn officers in clerical tasks instead of putting them on the street. There are things like just crazy administrative decisions or policies. Here's an example, okay? In other cities, police officers don't respond to traffic accidents, right? Police here spend an inordinate amount of time going to a fender bender where no one's injured. And there's a whole list of things, okay?